The night was quiet, but not peaceful. The air was cold enough to bite through skin, and the trees stood still like they were holding their breath. A man rode through the forest, his cloak heavy with dust and rain. His name was Aaron, and he had been hunting one person for years. The witch, they said, cursed his kind, but this was not a hunt born from duty. It was born from heartbreak, because long before she was a witch, before the world called her a monster, she was the woman he loved. Her name was Lyra. He used to dream of her laugh, soft and warm like sunlight through leaves of her hands, always cold but gentle, tracing the scars on his palms. Of the night she died, or the night he thought she did. He remembered the flames, the screams, the chaos when the curse began. He remembered holding her as she whispered something he couldn't understand, words that turned to light before she disappeared. After that night, nothing was the same. His clan turned to vampires, cursed to thirst for blood and forever fear the sun. And the last thing he heard before the darkness took him was her name, spoken as the cause of it all. Lyra, the witch of shadows. Years passed, though for him time had stopped meaning anything. He became a hunter, the strongest, the coldest. He killed witches, burned villages, followed orders without question. But deep down, he wasn't chasing revenge. He was chasing the truth. Because every time he killed another witch, he saw her face, and something in him whispered that she was still out there. That night, the forest seemed to call his name. The wind carried a faint smell. Wild roses. It stopped him. He hadn't smelled roses in years. Not since her. He dismounted and stood still, listening. The forest was silent except for the whisper of falling snow. The moon above was red. A blood moon, heavy and low. Something inside him stirred. An old ache he had buried long ago. He followed the scent, step by step, through the cold and the mist. And then he saw it. An old chapel, broken and forgotten, covered in vines and frost. The door hung loose on its hinges. The moment he touched it, it groaned like it remembered him. He stepped inside. The air was still, and the smell of dust filled his lungs. Moonlight poured through the cracked ceiling, touching the stone floor like a ghost's hand. And there, in the center of that ruined place, stood a woman in a pale cloak, her hair falling over her shoulders like a dark waterfall. She was facing away from him, but he didn't need to see her face. He already knew. His heart froze, his breath caught. It was her, Lyra. She looked exactly the same as she did the night she died. Not older, not changed, just alive. He wanted to speak, but no sound came out. For years he'd imagined this moment. What he would say, what he would ask. But now that she was here, words didn't matter. He stepped closer, his boots echoing on the stone. At the sound, she turned. Her eyes met his, and the world stopped. The same eyes, soft, gray, filled with something he couldn't name. But there was no recognition, no flicker of memory, no trace of love, only fear. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled. He stared at her, unable to speak. He wanted to tell her everything, who he was, who she was, what they once were. But his throat tightened. He could only whisper, "Lyra." She frowned, confused. "How do you know my name?" He almost smiled. Almost. The same question she had asked him the first time they met, long ago. "I've known it my whole life," he said quietly. She took a step back. "You're one of them, aren't you? A vampire." Aaron lowered his gaze. The words sounded sharp in her voice. "Yes," he said. "And you were supposed to be dead." Lyra's eyes widened, but not in recognition. in disbelief. "You must be mistaken." He could hear her heart. It beat fast, unsteady. It was real. She was real. Yet she didn't remember him. He took another step forward, careful not to frighten her. "I searched for you," he said softly. "For years, through every ruined town, every whisper, every grave. They told me you were the reason my people were cursed, that you were the Witch of Shadows." "I'm not," she began, shaking her head. "I'm not a witch." But the air around her told a different story. He could feel it, a soft pulse of energy, like a heartbeat made of light. Magic. It called to him, familiar, aching. "I don't remember you," she said after a long silence. "I don't remember any of that." He closed his eyes. "I know." Outside, thunder rumbled across the sky. The blood moon shone brighter, turning her pale skin to silver. For a long time, neither of them spoke. He just looked at her, the woman who had lived in his nightmares and his prayers, both curse and salvation. And she looked at him, the stranger who spoke her name like a song she couldn't recall. Something deep in her stirred. A flash, a memory, a voice saying her name in the dark. A promise made under a bleeding sky. She blinked, the vision fading. "Why are you here?" Aaron looked up, his eyes dark and heavy. "To finish what I started." Her breath caught. "Which is?" "To find the truth," he said. "And if the stories are right, to kill you." The words hung between them, sharp and cold, but even as he said them, his hand didn't move to draw his sword, because something inside him, something older than anger, whispered that killing her would destroy him too. She didn't run. She just looked at him, her eyes sad but steady. "Then what's stopping you?" He hesitated. For the first time in years, his voice broke. "Because I already lost you once," he said, "and once was enough." The storm outside grew louder. Wind tore through the cracks in the walls. Candles flickered, and snow began to fall through the broken roof. Lyra's hands glowed faintly, soft light curling around her fingers, born from instinct, not memory. He saw it, and felt his chest tighten. It was the same light that had taken her from him all those years ago. He took a step back, torn between love and fear. "What are you?" he whispered. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "I don't know." And for the first time, Aaron believed her. He turned away before his control broke completely. "I'll come back," he said quietly. "Why?" He paused at the doorway, the storm painting his silhouette in silver and shadow. "Because if you really are her," he said, "then you're the only one who can save us all." Then he was gone, swallowed by the snow and the night. And Lyra stood alone in the ruins, staring at the blood moon through the cracked roof, her heart aching for a man she couldn't remember, and a love she could still feel. Snow fell hard that night. By the time Aaron reached the edge of the forest, the world behind him was already gone, swallowed by white and silence. The chapel, the woman, the blood moon. All of it felt like a dream that had bled into reality. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself she couldn't be the same Lyra. But the lie didn't hold. Her eyes still haunted him, not because of fear, but because of what was missing in them. The warmth, the memory, the love he once knew. She had forgotten everything, even him. He rode until the snow turned to rain, then to mist. The road twisted down through black hills and lonely graves. Somewhere in the dark, a wolf howled, not for hunger, but for loss. Aaron knew that sound too well. He stopped near a stream, letting his horse drink. His reflection shimmered on the water, pale, hollow-eyed, more ghost than man. He could still see the faint red of the blood moon behind him, fading into clouds. He touched the hilt of his sword, the one forged from vampire steel. The metal pulsed faintly, alive with the blood it had spilled over centuries. He had made that blade for vengeance. Now it trembled in his hand, like even it knew that vengeance was not what he truly wanted anymore. He remembered the night the curse began. It had been a night of fire, the air thick with screams, the sky lit by magic. His clan's thirst had come suddenly, cruelly, turning friends into beasts. He had watched his own brother lose his mind, clawing at the walls until dawn burned him to ash. And in the middle of it all, Lyra stood, her hands glowing with that same silver light he'd seen again tonight. She'd said something then, something he hadn't understood. If I take it, you'll live, but you'll hate me for it. He never got to ask what she meant, because the next second, she was gone, taken by her own spell. Now she was alive, and she didn't remember any of it. He rode on until dawn, then stopped at a small village near the valley of Dareth. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the faint smell of bread filled the air. Humans still lived here, though they rarely saw anyone like him. He wrapped his cloak tighter, hiding his pale skin from the morning light. It burned, even through the clouds, but he endured it. Pain was an old friend. A market had just begun. He passed stalls of fruit, cloth, and old charms, meant to ward off the undead, though most were fake. Still, he felt the humans' eyes on him. They could sense what he was, even if they didn't know why he stopped at a small tavern. The sign above the door read, "The Silver Thorn." Inside, the air was warm and heavy with the smell of ale. A few travelers sat near the fire. An old man tuned a lute in the corner, and a barmaid eyed Aaron warily as he entered. He took a seat by the window, back to the wall. "Water," he said softly. The barmaid frowned. "Just water." He nodded. His voice left no room for questions. When she left, a rough-looking man at the next table leaned over. "You're not from here, are you?" Aaron didn't answer. The man smirked. "Didn't think so. Not with eyes like that." He leaned closer. "You're one of them, ain't you? One of the night folk?" Aaron looked up slowly, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Say that again." The man's grin faltered. "Easy, friend. Just saying what people whisper. They say there's been one of your kind in these woods, not killing, though. Hiding." Aaron's pulse quickened. "A woman." The man nodded. "Lives up in the old hills. Keeps to herself. Some say she heals people with magic. Others say she curses them. Nobody dares go near her." Aaron leaned back, hiding the storm inside him. "What's her name?" The man hesitated. "Lyra." The name hung in the air like a spell. By nightfall, Aaron was already riding again. The rain had stopped, but the wind howled through the trees. The hills grew steeper, the path darker. He followed the scent, faint but there, roses and smoke. The same scent from the chapel. As he climbed, the memories came harder, sharper. Her laugh, her promise, the way she used to press her forehead against his and whisper, "If we are cursed, then let us be cursed together." But they hadn't been together. She had carried the curse alone, and now she didn't even remember him. By the time he reached the hilltop, the moon had risen again, pale and distant now, no longer red. Ahead stood a small cottage, hidden beneath twisted trees. Candlelight flickered through a cracked window. Aaron dismounted and approached quietly. The door creaked open before he could knock. Lyra stood there. She looked startled, but not afraid. "You came back." I said I would. She stepped aside, letting him in. The cottage was small, herbs hanging from the ceiling, books stacked in every corner. It smelled of firewood and wildflowers. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "If people see you—" "They already know what I am," he said. "I don't care." She turned toward the fire, her back to him. "I don't remember you, Aaron. But since that night, I keep dreaming of a man who calls my name. You sound like him." His chest tightened. "That's because I am." She looked at him, her expression torn between disbelief and hope. "I've seen your face before," she whispered. "In the dreams. You were bleeding. I was trying to save you." He took a step closer. "You did save me, but it cost you everything." Silence fell again. The fire cracked softly, throwing gold light across her face. "I don't understand any of this," she said finally. "They call me a witch. They say I cursed your kind, but I don't even know what I am." He studied her carefully. "You're not evil. Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault." She looked down. "Then why do I feel so guilty?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth was written in both of their eyes. Two people bound by something they could neither name nor escape. Outside, thunder rolled again in the distance, and far away, in a dark castle beyond the mountains, a king stirred from his throne. He felt the same storm rising, and he knew one of his hunters had broken his oath. The night grew quieter after Aaron's words, but the silence between them was heavy. Outside, the wind carried the smell of pine and smoke. Inside, the fire burned low. Lyra sat near the hearth, fingers tracing the edges of a worn book. Her eyes moved over the pages, but she wasn't reading every few seconds. She'd glanced toward him, the man who had walked out of her dreams and into her doorway. Aaron stood near the window, watching the woods. He didn't belong here. Everything about him, his stillness, his pale skin, the faint red in his eyes, was a reminder of what he was. But in her small home, among the scent of herbs and candlelight, he almost looked human again. Finally, Lyra spoke. "You said I saved you once." He nodded. "You did." She hesitated. "Then why can't I remember?" "Because you were never meant to," he said quietly. "The magic that night took everything from you. Your life, your memories, your name. It was the only way to keep you alive." Lyra's hands tightened around the book. "And what about you?" "I lived," he said, "but not the way I was supposed to." He turned from the window, and for a moment, she saw pain flicker behind his calm. Later, when the fire had dimmed to glowing embers, Lyra spoke again. "There are nights," she whispered, "when I wake up crying. I don't know why it feels like someone's calling for me, but I can't reach them." Aaron didn't move, but she felt the weight of his gaze. "That's because your soul remembers what your mind has forgotten." She swallowed hard. "And you think that's you?" He stepped closer, slowly, until the space between them was only a breath. "I don't think," he said. "I know." Her heart beat faster. The air between them felt alive, like the moment before lightning strikes. But she turned away first. "If what you say is true, then what now?" "Now?" He looked toward the door. "Now the king will come for you." In the dark castle far away, the vampire king sat on his throne of bone and silver. The hall was silent except for the soft hiss of torches. Before him knelt a messenger, trembling, head bowed. "My lord," the messenger said, voice shaking. "The hunter Aaron, he's gone. He's been seen near the human borders, with a woman." The king's fingers drummed against the armrest. "A woman?" They say she heals. They call her a witch." The king leaned forward. His eyes gleamed like molten gold. "So," he said softly, "the Witch of Shadows returns." He rose, his cloak whispering against the marble. "Send my riders. Bring them both. Alive, if possible." Back in the cottage, the wind howled harder. Lyra wrapped her shawl tighter, staring into the flames. "What will he do if he finds me?" she asked. Aaron didn't answer right away. He knelt beside the hearth, adding another piece of wood. Finally, he said, "The king believes your blood can break the curse that binds us. But he's wrong. It will only kill you." She looked at him, eyes wide. "And you? What do you believe?" He met her gaze. "I believe you're the only part of this world that's still worth saving." Her breath caught. She didn't know how to answer that, or why his words hurt in a way that felt strangely sweet. The next morning, the village below stirred with quiet gossip. A stranger had been seen riding through the mist. A pale man, eyes like blood. Some said he came for the witch. Others said he was her protector, Lyra, and Aaron didn't go outside. He stood guard by the window, senses sharp, every sound feeding his unease. "You can't stay here," he told her. "They'll find you soon." "Then where can I go?" He hesitated. "There's an old monastery in the western mountains. The monks there used to hide those with magic. You'll be safe. For a time." Her voice softened. "And you?" "I'll lead them away." Lyra shook her head. "You'll die." "I already did," he said. "A long time ago." That night, they prepared to leave. Lyra packed herbs, candles, and a small wooden box she never opened. Aaron saddled his horse and checked the sky. Heavy with clouds. No moon tonight. When she stepped outside, her breath turned white in the air. He looked at her, and for the first time since he'd found her, he smiled. Small, tired but real. "You always hated the cold," he said. She frowned slightly. "Did I?" He nodded. "You used to say the cold made you feel alive. That's how I knew you were lying." A small laugh escaped her lips, soft and uncertain, like a sound from another life. They rode through the night, the forest stretching endless around them. Lyra's hands gripped his cloak as the wind whipped through her hair. She didn't know where they were going, only that she trusted him, and she didn't know why. When dawn neared, Aaron stopped by a cliff overlooking a sea of fog. "We rest here," he said, helping her down. Lyra turned to him. "Aaron, what if I never remember?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Then I'll remember for both of us." She wanted to speak, but no words came. The world around them was still, only their breaths and the wind. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid. But far below, in the forest they had left behind, the king's soldiers were already moving. Their armor was black, their eyes hollow, their mounts unnatural. Shadows given shape. They followed the trail of the witch's scent, and the hunter's guilt. And the blood moon, though hidden by clouds, still watched. The wind in the mountains was sharp and endless. It howled between the stone cliffs like a living thing, carrying whispers that weren't quite human. Aaron guided the horse up the narrow path, his cloak snapping behind him. Lyra held on tightly, her fingers cold against his arm. Below them, the forest was a black sea. Above, clouds drifted like smoke across the fading moon. They had been riding for 2 nights with no rest. Every time they stopped, Aaron could hear them. Faint echoes, far behind the king's riders. He didn't tell her. Not yet. By dawn, they found a cave carved into the side of a cliff. It was small but dry, with a view of the valley below. Lyra stumbled inside, wrapping her shawl tight, Her breath trembled. It's colder here than before. Aaron lit a small fire. We're close to the summit. The air thins. She sat near the flames, rubbing her hands together. You've done this before, haven't you? Run. He smiled faintly. Too many times. He placed his sword within reach, leaning it against the stone wall. Its silver edge caught the firelight, a faint red glint reflecting in his eyes. Lyra stared at the blade. Does it ever stop? She asked. The running? The fighting? No. He looked at her. It just changes what you're fighting for. Outside, snow began to fall. Light, almost peaceful. Inside, the warmth slowly returned to her skin. Lyra pulled the small wooden box from her bag and set it beside her. Aaron noticed. You've been carrying that since the cottage. She nodded. I don't know why. I just can't leave it behind. He knelt beside her. May I? She hesitated, then handed it to him. The box was simple, carved oak, smooth from years of touch. There was no lock, but the lid wouldn't open. It's sealed, he said softly. By magic. Lyra frowned. Then maybe it's mine. The moment her hand brushed the wood again, something stirred. A faint pulse, like a heartbeat. The fire flickered, and the air shifted. Aaron's head snapped up. Lyra! But before he could stop her, the box clicked open on its own. Inside was a single black feather. It shimmered faintly in the firelight, edges glowing silver for a heartbeat before fading back to shadow. Lyra stared at it, confused. What is it? Aaron's voice was low, almost reverent. A fragment of your power. She looked up. My power? He nodded slowly. You weren't just a witch, Lyra. You were the one who bound the curse to the king's bloodline, that feather. It's part of the spell that trapped him. Her hands trembled. If that's true, then I did this. I caused all of it. You tried to save us, he said, and they made you pay for it. Silence. Only the fire crackled. Lyra's eyes filled with something between fear and recognition. I remember fire, she whispered, and screaming, and you, calling my name. Aaron's heart stopped for a moment. Then it's starting, he said. Your memories. Lyra pressed her hands to her head, tears stinging her eyes. It hurts. He moved closer, placing his hand gently over hers. Don't fight it. Let it come. The cave dimmed for a moment, as if the light itself bent toward her. The feather began to glow softly, and from it came a faint sound. A heartbeat, matching hers. And then, a flash. A city burning. A throne of silver melting into ash. A crown falling from a man's hand. The vampire king's. And her. Standing before him, eyes glowing white, whispering a spell that tore the sky apart. Lyra gasped and fell forward, catching herself on her hands. The vision ended as quickly as it came. Aaron caught her before she hit the ground. What did you see? He asked. She looked at him, eyes filled with tears. The end. I remember the end. He brushed the snow from her hair, voice quiet. Then you also remember what began it. She shook her head. Not yet. Then you will, he said. Soon. Outside the snow thickened. Far in the distance a horn sounded, low, dark, and growing closer. The king's riders had found their trail. The sound came again. The low, distant horn that rolled through the valley like thunder. Aaron's eyes narrowed. They found us. Lyra looked toward the cave entrance, heart racing. How far? Close enough to smell the smoke, he said, grabbing his sword and throwing his pack over his shoulder. We leave now. The fire hissed as he kicked snow over it. Within moments, the warm glow vanished, replaced by the pale light of dawn and falling snow. Lyra pulled her cloak tight. We can't outrun them forever." "We don't need forever," Aaron said. "Just enough time." They climbed higher into the mountains, the storm thickening around them. Snow whipped through the air, stinging Lyra's face, stealing her breath. Aaron moved ahead, clearing a path, his figure dark against the endless white. When the wind grew too strong, he turned back and held out his hand. "Stay close." She took it without hesitation. His hand was cold, but steady. She felt strength there, not just the strength of a hunter, but of someone who refused to let go again. For hours they climbed in silence, their footprints vanishing as soon as they were made. The world around them blurred, sky and earth becoming one endless storm. Lyra stumbled once, knees hitting the snow. Aaron was beside her instantly, pulling her up. "Breathe," he said. "Don't stop." She nodded weakly. "I'm trying." He looked at her, pale lips, trembling hands, and his voice softened. "You're stronger than you think." By dusk, they reached a ridge that overlooked a frozen valley. Below, through the blur of snow, Aaron saw movement, dark shapes winding their way through the forest. The riders. "They're spreading out," he muttered, "hunting by scent." Lyra looked at him. "They'll catch us." "Not if I mislead them." He turned, but she grabbed his sleeve. "You can't go alone." His eyes met hers, fierce, steady. "If they find you, they'll take you back to the king. If they find me, they'll just try to kill me." She shook her head, tears freezing on her lashes. "I just got you back. I can't lose you again." A flicker of pain crossed his face. Something raw and real. "You already lost me once," he said softly. "Don't make it twice." He stepped out into the storm, ready to descend the ridge. But then the air shifted. The wind stopped for a heartbeat. The snow froze mid-fall, hanging like white dust in the air, and Lyra, standing at the cliff's edge, began to glow. Aaron turned. Lyra. Her eyes had gone pale, almost silver. The feather she carried floated out of her cloak, spinning in the air before her like it was alive. The storm howled again, but now it moved around them, bending away, circling them like a living wall. The riders below halted. Their torches flickered. Horses screamed. "What's happening?" Lyra gasped, clutching her head. "I can't stop it." Aaron reached her, gripping her shoulders. "Don't try to stop it. Let it move through you." The wind roared. The snow turned to light. And then silence. When it cleared, the valley below was buried beneath a smooth white sheet. Every trail, every footprint, gone. The riders were lost. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted. The feather dimmed, returning to her hand. Aaron knelt beside her, brushing the snow from her hair. "You did that," he said softly. "I didn't mean to." "Maybe not," he said, helping her to her feet. "But your power did. It remembers what you've forgotten." She looked out over the valley. An endless sea of white. What does it want from me? Aaron looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn bled through the clouds. "To finish what you started," he said. That night, they found shelter in the ruins of an old monastery. Stone walls cracked and covered in frost. A single bell still hanging above the doorway. Lyra sat beside the broken altar, staring into a small flame Aaron had built. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of things neither dared to say. Finally, she whispered, "You said I tried to save you once. What happened that night?" Aaron looked into the fire. "You gave me your blood. It kept me from turning, but it cursed you instead." Lyra's voice trembled. "So, that's why the king hates me." "No," he said quietly. "He hates you because you loved me." The storm eased by morning. Pale light slipped through the cracks in the monastery roof and settled on the stone floor. Dust hung in the air like snow that had forgotten how to fall. Aaron had barely slept. He sat against the wall, sword across his knees, watching the door. Lyra lay nearby, wrapped in his cloak. For the first time since he'd found her, she looked peaceful. When she stirred, the quiet broke. "How long was I out?" "Half a day," he said. "You needed it." She pushed herself up, brushing the frost from her hair. "You watched all night." He gave a small smile. Old habits. Her eyes moved across the ruined room. Statues broken, books scattered, candles long burned to dust. What was this place? She asked. "A monastery," he said. "Long before the curse, men came here to learn about the old magic, the kind you used." Lyra stood and touched one of the walls. Carved symbols ran along the stone, faint but still glowing under her fingers. "I've seen these before," she whispered. "Where?" "In my dreams," she said. "Only there's a door, right here." Aaron walked to her side. "A door?" She nodded and pressed her palm flat against the carving. The air shimmered. The stone beneath her hand shifted, rippling like water. A deep rumble filled the room, and a seam appeared in the wall. Aaron drew his sword. "Stay behind me." But Lyra stepped forward, unafraid. "No, it's calling me." Inside was a narrow stairway winding down into the dark. The air was cold and smelled of metal and dust. The only light came from the small feather in Lyra's hand. It glowed softly, guiding the way. At the bottom, they found a chamber filled with ancient writing and circles carved into the floor. In the center stood a stone basin, filled with frozen water. Lyra approached it slowly. "This place, it feels alive." Aaron watched her carefully. Alive, or remembering. She didn't answer. She reached out and touched the ice. It cracked instantly, and light spilled up from beneath it, the walls lit with moving shapes, images of a city in flames, soldiers kneeling, a young woman standing before them with eyes like silver. Lyra gasped. "That's me." Aaron's grip on his sword tightened, but he said nothing. The images shifted again. The vampire king kneeling before Lyra, begging her chanting words in a forgotten tongue. A surge of light bursting from her hands, splitting the sky apart. Then darkness. Lyra stepped back, shaking. "I wasn't saving them. I was sealing them away." Aaron's voice was low. "You trapped the king's soul. His body lived, but his heart didn't. And that's why he hunts me," she said, tears in her eyes. "Because only I can give it back." Aaron moved closer, his expression torn between fear and awe. "If you free him, the curse ends. But so does everything that came after it, me included." Lyra looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "I was born from that curse," he said quietly. "A half-blood hunter made by your spell if it breaks. I vanish with it." For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the drip of melting ice echoed in the room. Lyra finally whispered, "So to save the world, I have to lose you." Aaron met her eyes. "You already lost me once. Maybe this time you choose what stays lost." She shook her head. "No, I won't let that be the only choice." He opened his mouth to speak, but the feather flared suddenly, casting long shadows on the walls. From somewhere above, the sound of shattering glass echoed through the monastery. Aaron froze. "They've found us." Lyra turned toward the stairs, fear flashing across her face. "What do we do?" He raised his sword, voice calm. "We finish what you started." The monastery trembled. The sound came first. Hooves pounding against stone, doors breaking, the hiss of steel drawn from scabbards. Then came the voices, deep, hollow, carrying no warmth of life. Aaron's eyes flashed red for an instant. "They're here!" Lyra clutched the glowing feather to her chest. "How did they find us?" He looked toward the stairs. Magic leaves a trail, no matter how old. Another crash shook the hall above. Dust fell from the ceiling. The echo of armor filled the stairwell. Aaron turned to her, voice low but steady. "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, don't let them touch you." Lyra nodded, fear and determination twisting together in her chest. The first of the king's riders appeared at the top of the stairs. Tall, armored in black steel, their faces hidden behind helmets shaped like skulls. The air around them seemed to burn cold. Aaron lifted his sword. The silver edge gleamed in the torchlight. "Go back to your master," he said. "Tell him she's not his to claim." The lead rider raised his weapon, a curved blade dripping with frost. The voice that came from inside the armor wasn't human. "She belongs to the blood she cursed." And then they charged. Steel met steel in a storm of sparks. Aaron moved like a shadow, each strike fast, clean, merciless. He fought not to win, but to buy time. Lyra pressed her back against the wall, clutching the feather tighter. Each clang of metal felt like a heartbeat. His heartbeat. And something deep inside her began to stir again. When one of the riders broke past Aaron's defense and turned toward her, instinct took over. Lyra raised her hand. The air around her rippled. The symbols carved into the floor began to glow. The rider froze mid-step, armor cracking as invisible energy wrapped around him. Lyra's voice shook. "Stay away from him." The light exploded outward. The rider shattered into ash. Aaron turned, eyes wide for a second. "Lyra." She looked at her hand, trembling, faintly glowing. "I didn't mean to." He cut her off. "Don't be sorry. Remember it." More riders poured into the chamber, and the light in Lyra's palm grew brighter. The ground trembled. The air burned white. Aaron fought beside her, his blade cutting through darkness, her magic pushing it back. Together, they were fire and frost, chaos and memory, but there were too many. A blow caught Aaron's shoulder, sending him crashing into the stone wall. He grunted. Blood streaking his sleeve, Lyra cried out and ran to him. But before she could reach him, a new voice filled the chamber. "Enough." The riders fell silent instantly. Through the broken archway at the top of the stairs, a tall figure entered, cloaked in crimson, crown of bone glinting under the faint light, the Vampire King. Even the air seemed to bend away from him. His eyes, bright as molten gold, fixed on Lyra. "After all these years," he said softly, "the witch finally remembers." Lyra stood frozen. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You were there. That night," he smiled. "I was. You sealed my heart and left me hollow. You took everything that made me human." "You weren't human," Aaron hissed from behind her. The king's gaze shifted toward him. "Ah, the hunter who refuses to die. My favorite mistake." He raised his hand. Aaron's body lifted off the ground. Pinned by invisible force, Lyra screamed, "Stop!" "Or what?" the king asked calmly. "You'll burn me again?" Her eyes filled with tears. "If I have to." The feather in her hand burst into light, brighter than fire, whiter than the sun. The air howled. The ground cracked. The riders staggered, their armor splitting. The king raised his hand to shield his eyes, but he was smiling. "Yes," he whispered. "That's the power I want." Lyra's voice trembled. "You'll never have it." The light flared, blinding, pure, and for an instant, the entire chamber vanished in white. When the light faded, the riders were gone. The king remained, though his cloak was torn and smoke rose from his skin. He looked at her, fury twisting his perfect face. "This isn't over, witch," he hissed. "Every curse must come full circle." And with that, he vanished into shadow. Silence fell. Aaron dropped to his knees. Breathing hard, Lyra rushed to him. He managed a weak smile. "You did it." Her eyes filled with tears. "No, I think I just made it worse." He leaned against her, voice fading. "Then we finish it together." Night returned with a different silence. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy, as if the mountains themselves were waiting for something. Aaron sat against the broken wall of the monastery, his wounds wrapped in strips of cloth. The blood had stopped, but his skin looked pale under the firelight. Lyra knelt beside him, mixing herbs with trembling hands. "You shouldn't move," she said. He gave her a small smile. "You sound like you used to." She looked at him, confused. Like what? Like someone who cared more than she wanted to. Lyra didn't answer. She pressed the herbs against his wound, and he hissed softly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "Don't be. Pain means I'm still here." Outside, the sky began to change. The moon rose over the peaks, huge, bright, and red. Lyra looked up. The blood moon. Aaron followed her gaze. His expression hardened. "It's the same night every year. The night the curse was born." The wind stirred, carrying faint whispers. Old words, old memories. Lyra shivered. "He'll come back tonight." Aaron nodded slowly. "He has to. The curse binds him to it." "And me?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, and there was sadness in his voice. "You're its heart." The light from the moon grew stronger, bleeding through the cracks in the walls. The monastery glowed faint red. Lyra stood in the center of the room, the feather hovering before her like it was alive. A deep hum filled the air, low, constant, the sound of something ancient awakening. "Aaron," she said softly, "if I end the curse, what happens to you?" He didn't look away. "You already know." Her voice trembled. "Then I can't." He smiled, tired but kind. "You can, because this was always your story, not mine." The ground trembled. The shadows on the walls began to twist and stretch. The king's voice echoed through the air, not from the door, not from the stairs, but from everywhere. "Witch of shadows," he whispered, "you cannot escape what you created." A figure emerged from the red mist, tall, cloaked, his golden eyes burning brighter than before. The king looked both beautiful and broken, half of his face smooth, the other scarred by her light. Lyra stepped forward. "You've taken enough from me." He smiled, cruel and calm. "You think you can end me. You are me. My heart beats in your chest." She flinched. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" he said. "Look at him. Your hunter. His life was forged from the same curse that bound me. You keep what I lost." Aaron raised his sword. "If you want her heart, you'll have to take it." The king's smile vanished. Gladly. They clashed. Light and shadow, curse and creation. Every strike of Aaron's blade tore the air with fire. Every gesture of the king's hand sent darkness bursting through the stone. Lyra stood in the middle, trembling, caught between the two forces that had once been her life. The feather burned brighter and brighter, until the light grew painful. Then she heard it. A voice inside her own mind. "A heart divided cannot break a curse. Choose." Her breath caught. "Choose." The voice echoed again, softer this time. "One must end so the other may begin." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at Aaron, his face pale, his movements slowing, and then at the king, whose wounds healed as fast as they came, and she understood. She stepped forward. Both men froze. "Lyra," Aaron started, but she raised her hand. "I know what I have to do." The feather rose from her palm, glowing white now, brighter than the blood moon itself. The wind roared. The ground shook. Lyra's voice was steady. The curse began, with love twisted into hate. It will end with love made whole again. She turned to Aaron. "I'm sorry." He shook his head, his voice breaking. "Don't you dare." But it was already too late. She pressed the feather to her chest. Light poured from her body. Not red, not gold, but pure white. The king screamed as cracks spread through his form, light tearing through the darkness that made him. Aaron fell to his knees, reaching toward her. "Lyra." Her last words were barely a whisper. "Remember me." The light consumed the monastery. When it faded, the moon was no longer red. The storm was gone. The king had vanished. Only Aaron remained, kneeling in the quiet, the feather turned to ash in his hand. Outside, dawn touched the mountains. Soft, gold, alive. He looked up, eyes full of grief and something like peace. "She kept her promise," he said quietly. "She saved us." The wind carried her name across the valley. Gentle, endless, like a song that would never fade years past. The curse was gone, but the world still carried its scars. The forests grew again, where the fire had burned them bare. The rivers cleared. The cities healed. People spoke of the blood moon only in stories now, half believing, half afraid to. But one man still remembered. Aaron walked through the forest that had once been the edge of a battlefield. He no longer wore armor or carried a sword. His hair, once dark, was now streaked with silver, and the fire in his eyes had softened into something human. Every step he took left no sound. The earth seemed to know him now, not as a hunter, not as a weapon, but as a ghost of what had been. He stopped at the edge of a lake. The water was still, clear enough to reflect the moon above, a pale silver disk, calm and clean. For a moment he saw her there, Lyra. Her face shimmered faintly across the surface of the water, smiling the way she never did in life. Free, peaceful. Aaron sank to his knees. "You kept your promise," he whispered. The wind stirred softly, carrying the faintest sound, a voice, familiar and warm. "So did you." He froze, his eyes lifted, searching the trees, the stars. But there was no one there, only the quiet rustle of leaves and the soft hum of the night. Still, he smiled. "I know," he said. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. Inside was what remained of the feather, just a faint trace of silver dust. He poured it into the lake. The dust drifted across the surface, glowing for a moment before disappearing beneath the water. The moonlight shimmered brighter. The trees seemed to breathe. The night grew warmer. Somewhere in the distance, a single white bird rose from the forest, circling above him before flying toward the horizon. Aaron watched it until it vanished. Then he turned from the lake and began to walk, slow, steady, and lighter than he had in years. The curse was over, but her memory remained, not as pain, but as light. And as he disappeared into the forest, her voice whispered one last time, soft and certain, "Until the next moon."